But the older we get, the more we're realizing there is a limited amount of time that is still left, right? And I think that this realization is unconsciously in us, so we know it. And then we start to take these things more seriously because we want to make the most of our life as possible, the meaningful life. So we are also getting in the age where we might have children or friends starting to have children. And that also gives a completely different perspective on values, like where are my values in my life today? When I'm younger, I'm sadly I was the younger generation, it's different, but you're more in this setup of, okay, I'm finishing this to reach this. So you're more working towards something and you're taking things as they are without questioning them too much.
Welcome to the Product Tea with Lea. I am your host, Lea Darra, and we are about to spill the tea with the best from tech about product growth and senior leadership topics. Good morning, everyone. Meet a world record freediver who learned to navigate life's deepest pressures before she could ride a bike. Diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in childhood, she's treating resilience like an art form. One that she's mastered both in the ocean depths and on leadership tables. As a former head of customer success, she now guides athletes chasing medals and executives chasing growth to find balance where others find burnout. Her secret, transforming I cannot into, hey, watch me dive deeper. Today, she's teaching us how to reclaim our work lives with the same purposeful breath that broke world records. Welcome to the Product Tea, Anna-Karina. How are you doing this morning?
Wow, what an intro. I'm good.
Was it 100% correct? Was it a complete description of your personality?
Well, yeah, you did describe some points of it. Yes, very, very outstanding points of it.
It's very nice to have you here. We both met a couple of weeks ago, just in real life. You are also living in Switzerland, which is great. That already speaks of quality. But aside from that, what do people get wrong about you once they get to know you?
Once they get to know me, what they get wrong about me is sometimes about my diet. So if they don't know me, sometimes, of course, if you meet someone at dinner somewhere in a group, there's a group of people and they find out I'm vegan, they don't know the reason why I'm vegan or anything like that. And sometimes I feel like put in a category of people, and sometimes there is like a invisible mirror. So the people think that they also have to be vegan just because I am, or that I do not drink alcohol very often. It's the same thing with that. But in the end, I don't care what diet everyone is choosing. So even me, I'm not 100% vegan. I eat egg. I started to eat eggs 1.5 years ago. And if I feel like having a glass of wine for a really exceptional, nice occasion, I will still have wine. So yeah, that's maybe it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because I feel like nutrition and religion are both topics where you almost feel sorry for I don't know, because you don't know what people are implying with it. And then they feel tempted to but she can do this, so therefore she also expects me to do it and so forth. But I think oftentimes it's just it's not that consequential, right?
No, it's not.
So what we're going to talk about today, and I think it's one of the topics that I never really managed that well myself as an ADHD child that constantly has chaos in her head, is on one way a little bit on how to reclaim a little bit of silence in your life, but maybe also about how to take back control of your work life or your life in general. Can you maybe double click a little bit on this, what that means for you? Because the title is quite lofty, right? It is kind of like a very kind of broad thing. How is this different from, how to avoid a burnout, or how to do stress management, for instance?
Yeah, so how is this different? So in the end, managing stress and managing a burnout, it's a symptom. Underlying, there's so much more. And there are different symptoms we have in the society that may or may not, but can get tracked back to the same cause, say it like that. And I was always a very active person, active child, let's say, active in life, even though I was not a sport person per se, even though in my childhood I wasn't following one particular sport, always doing a lot of different activities. So I was diagnosed to have multiple sclerosis in 2007 when I was about finishing school. And that had an effect on the next 10 years of my life. And I really want to also say here that the change, if you take a change, it's not happening from one day to another. So they have to happen multiple things. They're, of course, starting with a mindset. But even though you have the mindset, you have habits, you have clusters, you have traumas, maybe even. So a lot of psychological big topics in life that you cannot figure out one day to another. But coming back to this event, so I think what is the greatest thing that I learned from that experience, from that change, is the self-responsibility that I took out of it to make that change.
So I would imagine, I mean, you were quite young when you got the diagnosis, right? And I think at that point you didn't know anything about the illness itself. Like when you got the diagnosis, I would imagine that this is extremely scary. Can you maybe also a little bit touch on this in the sense of, did you go into a mode of panic in the sense of like, oh my God, this is a death sentence or whatever? Because my only understanding that I have is from my aunt who had it, and she died quite brutally also because of it. But like, can you touch a little bit on this, like how that went about?
Yes, so I can remember it very well. And at that time, I was really a party girl. And when that came, I was in the hospital and I felt paralyzed because a friend of my mom had it at that time. And she was very, very quickly in a wheelchair and everything. And I didn't see the lifestyle connected to that in this moment, of course. I knew it's not so good to smoke. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It's never good to smoke. And the doctors also told me afterwards, of course. And you know it's not good to smoke. Okay. But there's so much more than just giving up to smoke, right? For example. And so, and the other thing is, I was very lucky and at the same time, because when I get the diagnosis is never final. If the doctors find the lesions in your scans, in the brain scans, they cannot say if it's happening the first time. There have to be these events in several parts of the brain. And if they are not 100% in all these parts of the brain, they cannot define it as the sickness.
No.
So that's what they told me. So they said it's very likely that you have it, but we cannot 100% confirm, except it happens again. So I started to lie to myself for a few years after that, telling myself, oh, I don't have it, it's not so bad, and of course I will not smoke too much, and so on. So I really pushed the topic away for quite some time. But it came again with just a little, hit me only on a very little scale, but it was not physically limiting me in anything. I felt just a little numbness in my tip of finger somewhere, I think on the right hand. But what was hitting me was a diagnosis. So there was a confirmation, okay, that's it, right? It's there, it's real. Okay, and that was, I think, 4 years after 2007. And then I started to think of my habits a little bit, but also not very, very consequent. So I tried to eat a bit healthier, I tried to smoke less, and so on. But I still was in the same lifestyle, let's say. And only when I moved to Switzerland in 2013, which is many years after compared to some other people who have the same diagnosis, I'm very, very lucky that the sickness was so patient with me. And in 2013, it hit really, really hard. So I really had trouble to walk, and I really love to walk and to move. Couldn't really run, even though I was running. I couldn't write. I didn't feel my hand for a long time. And there was this moment when you are at the doctor, at the neurologist, and they ask you to do these easy things like touch your nose with your finger and walk on one line in a straight line. And I couldn't do any of these exercises. And I so hardly tried to do it, and I couldn't do any of it. And then I really felt, okay, this is it. I felt for me, this is the moment I'm hitting the bottom in life. And I didn't tell anyone about it because I didn't want the pity. Because I remember when I had the diagnosis in 2007, when I was still very young, there was people from my family coming that I never really see, and they were crying in front of my bed. I'm like, oh, come on, why are you crying? I mean, it's me, I'm not crying, you know? So I didn't want to have the pity. I didn't want to have the overwhelmment of my grandma or my mother. So there was just one friend that I told. She was working as a nurse. So for her, in her previous life, we studied together, but before she was a nurse. So she was very hands-on with such topics. And she didn't pity me. She said, okay, this is just a condition, and we do the best we can to overcome it, and then we see what we do about it.
That is really interesting to me because I feel like, I'm not sure whether this is mainly a thing about being as a child, but like if you're dealing with something like this, you either have physical signals like you had, you know, like in the sense of like something is happening to you, or you have an ominous diagnosis that is telling you something, but you're not feeling it, right? So that was the start of it as well. Like your body was not yet, I think you were not really impaired at the beginning of it. So it was kind of easy to kind of shelf it away.
Yeah.
And I can relate to this a little bit in the sense that I was diagnosed, I think it was about 5 years ago, with a potential cancerous growth of my nodules on my thyroid. And I ended up with a diagnosis where they said, like, well, you have a 30% chance that this is actually bad, right? Like, if you're not removing this, I think it was something around in the next 5 years, there's a 30% chance that you're going to get cancer. And it's a weird thing because you have to make it like I had to kind of make a decision on it, right? So, like, am I doing something? In my case, it was surgery, but I did not have any physical sort of impairment because of the cancer. It was just that my thyroid was acting up and giving me all the time problems, but I could have also regulated this just like with medication.
Mm-hmm.
And the point that I'm trying to get at is that it is so difficult sometimes to just act on stuff where you don't feel it and it's just an ominous number. It's like, oh, you have a 10%, 20%, 30%. And it's really brutal to make a decision based on this.
Yes, it is.
Because you do not know, is it going to help or not? If I'm doing it, I will never know whether it actually did help or not, right? Like, it's a really weird thing. So trying to now make the bow around this entire topic, do you feel like as grown-ups, let's assume people are over 30 that are listening to this in the sense of like, they have some experience also in work and they start to know how they're actually losing control? Because I would also imagine that, like your sleep is disturbed, you're probably putting too much effort into the company, you're unsure about your job situation, that kind of thing. Do you feel like this is also sort of a similar story, that with age we are starting to act on things before they become too bad? Or is it still the same thing that I sort of described from before?
Yeah, there is something what I read about in a book that I also related to, and I didn't see it yet. But the older we get, the more we're realizing there is a limited amount of time that is still left, right? And I think that this realization is unconsciously in us, so we know it. And then we start to take these things more seriously because we want to make the most of our life as possible, the meaningful life. So we are also getting in the age where we might have children or friends starting to have children. And that also gives a completely different perspective on values, like where are my values in my life today? When I'm younger, I'm sadly I was the younger generation, it's different, but you're more in this setup of, okay, I'm finishing this to reach this. So you're more working towards something and you're taking things as they are without questioning them too much. How do I feel in this situation? Like this very important voice, how do I feel, is more or less muted. And the older we get, and in our modern life where we have all these tools now coming up, like breathwork and yoga is more present than it's ever been, we are reflecting on us. And then we also see that there are these conditions that everyone has. And this is something I realized, like I'm talking with a lot of people and it's not just, I have this condition, it's official, it's multiple sclerosis, whatsoever, you cannot heal it. Yes, it sounds like a really, really traumatic thing. But if you look and if you talk to people, everyone has a condition. And even though it sounds like a little condition, it's just a skin condition. If you look at skin conditions, very often they are connected to the nervous system. And the nervous system is what feels the stress on the sympathicus more than anything else. And from there, a lot of things can occur. So yeah, coming back to your question is that you said something about the day-to-day stress that people are in, stress management, and that people are feeling themselves if they are getting in their 30s. And
No.
I think this is for these reasons. But acting on it is also a different story.
So let's try to make this more practical in the sense that, okay, I guess that most people are aware in what shape they are in some kind of way. I actually do think so. They just sometimes don't realize maybe that they should act on it right now. But let's assume that someone realizes that, hey, like this entire thing with my job, with my other responsibilities, everything. And I mean, specifically, so my audience is very often like founders, which are the primary group of like overworking themselves. Then you have the hustle bros on LinkedIn telling you constantly that you have to work 16-hour days.
Yeah.
You have to be successful, you have to be this and this and this. And all of this is very, very future driven in the sense that you also said it's like it's something that eventually is coming around in the next 2 to 3 years. So let's say we realize, hey, shit, maybe this stuff is getting over my head. So what is the practical advantage of working towards being more present in the moment? Or how would you start this entire journey? Like, let's say someone is coming to you and says that's amazing. Like, what can I do?
Well, I think the work is up on this person to also define where do I want to create an impact. So it's not about telling people to leave their jobs or to being too strict and setting boundaries, too harsh or something like that. It's more that everyone needs to realize there is a limited amount of time and where do I want to spread or want to focus in, right? I mean, a big part of it is just the structure. It sounds so easy, but it's not easy to have less meetings, especially if you are a founder. You have so many stakeholders. It's the company, it's the employees, it's the investors. It's so many things just to really to set the priorities. Of course, it's an advice. They also know it's nothing new, but what is new is to not just go over this voice over and over again, to really deeply listen to it and do it and take it into reality. And then the other aspect is it's not just about reducing something, it's also in adding more quality to your life, like to identify, okay, looking back at the last 10 years, maybe, where was my fun? Where is my passion? What do I do to regenerate, to recover? And how often do I really do that and to really make space for that? So whoever needs your attention, whoever needs you to be present, is it the family, is it the company, whoever it is, needs your full attention. You can only give that if you have that wellness moment, if you can take that for yourself. And then the other aspect is not just to be calm, but also to be fit. So I really believe that the body we are living in that wants to be active. Like we cannot live. It's not alive if you just sit in front of the computer. So I always say, if you don't make your body busy, your body will make you busy. And yeah, you don't want to end up having autoimmune diseases or something like that. So it's a nervous system, it's a muscles, it's so many things. And then it can be a general fitness. I would really recommend to add general fitness. It can be endurance training, strength training, like a really healthy mixture of that. It can be yoga.
Yeah.
It can be freediving, of course. But to add elements to keep your body busy in a way that you feel motivated, that you lie in your bed before the next day is starting and that you feel, oh yeah, I want to get up. And the first thing I want to do is I want to go and hit some lanes in a swimming pool. I want to go in the gym. So something that is good for your body, but also where you recover in a way.
I think you said so many good things right now. And I think the crux of it is that it's so difficult to be excited about something that is just for you instead of like, oh, I'm excited for the next contract or the next thing that's going to be work related and so on, because that's not necessarily just for you. I'm not saying that. I mean, I also get a lot of satisfaction out of my work life, but I find it fun when I talk to other people, which kind of reflected on me as well. When you say that, oh, I don't have time, the sentence like, I don't have time, usually means that you're not prioritizing yourself, because I feel like we always find time to make time for when our best friends have something, or like when our parents are sick or whatever it is, or there's an important meeting, like a board meeting, or like, oh, I need to talk to my boss. But whenever it's about a meeting with yourself, where I think what you just said, like I go for 30 minutes to the gym or whatever, maybe I can skip it today because, it's not that I just have to deal with myself, right? Like instead of like with the disappointment from other people. And I feel like that is really sad. And I can also speak on this in the sense that I've been sedentary for like the last 15 years almost, or like 14 years when I stopped teaching breakdance. And I started a year ago again, like really heavily to do strength training, resistance training. I started to go bouldering and so forth. But it was kind of like a gradual increase again. And I think it's one of the best things that I do, because even if I'm out of a job or whatever is happening, this is the one kind of thing for me. But how would you structure this, like to get into it, like step by step? Because it's always easy to tell people to like, hey, change your nutrition, go to exercise, become a world-class athlete,
Exactly.
right? So,
Yes.
I mean, so how do we start with this in a more bite-sized way that kind of works for people in general?
Yeah, so I like to work very practical for myself as well. Like I was in the same position. Like I'm just coming out of this job, like a head of customer success in a fast growing scale up company. In that time, I took some one unpaid leave months here and there, but not very often. I could work remote, so that really helped. But I end up to spend all my holidays investing in training, for example. And at some point, I realized, okay, this is maybe also too much, right? So where also this sport can be overwhelming at some point, and at some point not anymore recovering. And people who work with me, I help them to structure week by week in the beginning. So to really tightly structure and help them to organize every week, because if you start something new, we have the tendency to overdo it, to do too much of it. And then it can also create some stress. And I think the recipe for success here is to set your values, and you can reassess your values always. Like every day you can reassess it and arrange your schedule. And the more you do it, the more you're conscious about it, the more you learn also to make this priority, to make this a habit. And it will come from alone at some point. But in the beginning, I think it really helps to structure on a day-by-day basis. And it helped me. At the time, I also had a trainer who helped me to structure my weeks. And it helped me because I had so many things in my head, like the meetings, like the responsibility in my job, like the athletic goals that I set, and also my condition that I want to stay healthy. So I have to respect a diet. I need a meditation. So then I had a trainer at that time who really did that for me. Yeah. He didn't do the health part. He only did the sport part, let's say it like that. And what I want to do, where I will create the value for people working with me, I would like to look at the overall agenda. So not just on the work part, not just on the sport part, but also to see whether this person has enough rest days, yes or no, or what is going wrong, or how do you feel with it? Is it, to really take the control for this person? And at some point, the end goal would be to give the enablement to this person that they can themselves feel better, what is too much or what is just okay, right?
Can you give a specific example of something just so I can imagine it? Like, I don't know whether you can talk about it, but for somebody, it can also be something invented. You don't need to mention names, but I don't know, like a specific goal that someone wanted to do. And like, how did this like typically then also evolve, for instance, just to start with?
Yeah, people are approaching me either to reach a certain goal in sport, but mostly people reach out to me because they already know that I'm looking at the overall concept of health in the same context. Also in the sport context, you can easily get burnout. Or people coming from me more from the perspective that they want to do their sport or fitness in a healthy level, but they want to manage their work-life balance better. And of course, depending on their goals, we're starting in the first weeks to set an agenda. And I think the magic happens more in the feedback sessions, right? So in the beginning, if you just see the agenda, it looks very structured. It doesn't communicate a lot of emotions there. It's very, very practical. But I think the real work starts when I hear how it feels for this person, how also the body gets shaped when they feel they are getting more strength walking up the elevator or whatever, like this kind of things.
So, like, how do you think about accountability in this? I would imagine that people are sometimes, I don't want to use the word embarrassed, but like maybe, like, oh, why do I have to ask for help for something like this? I'm running a startup, or, like I'm this and that, right? Like everybody like, oh, I'm such an important person. Why do I even have to ask for help? But I mean, if they're coming to you, then I mean, I guess, that's kind of taken care of. But like, how do you think about accountability in this, and also the inevitable failure that's going to happen because they cannot stick to it or whatever?
I think that people, they think first of a goal, like be the goal in sport, for example. And they don't think so much about the rest. And the rest that I take more or less care for them. So I also have another example from my partner, actually. Like he is a swimming coach, and he has this one person who is coming to his swim classes, but they don't swim. So they just sit and talk, right? And effective. So this is very similar to how can I transport this message? Like the message is they want to reach a certain goal, and I help them to get to that goal. But on the way to reach this goal, there will be a lot of conversations about time management, about priorities, about value, about health, about diet, because it's very connected. Everything is connected. Like if you feel stressed in your job, people mostly tend to feel lesser stress if they follow what they like to do before their work. So it's all interconnected. And the other way around, the job also, transports the stress sometimes into their wellness time, right? And there come more into the mental aspect of that mentoring or coaching. And depending on what the people need, how they feel with certain exercises, we will talk about it and figure it out. But also, accountability, how it practically looks like, depending on the package. Sometimes we work together on WhatsApp. So I give them a trainings plan, and I also proactively ask for the outcomes or if they have a specific training sessions. And then they're leaving me a voice message, they're leaving me a WhatsApp message, or we can also have a personal session once a week, something like that.
Are there some things or smaller things that where you would say that if someone is not ready for personal coaching, that you would always recommend, regardless of who it is? I mean, I'm not sure how specific that you maybe have some advice aside from like, hey, fix your sleep and that kind of stuff. But are there specific things that you think that, hey, you know what, if you're doing like these things,
Yes,
you should start to do them anyways? And, we can still talk about it if you don't manage that, but like these are the things that you should take care of in any case now, today.
Well, it's a very general question. Of course, it depends completely on the situation, but we're assuming this person has a stress problem, or what is our hypothesis?
Yeah, like let's say it's not like targeted exercise towards a specific athletic goal, but it's more like, hey, I feel like I don't know, I just don't want to go on like this. I'm just too stressed. There's just way too much stuff going on.
Well, it's congratulations. This person realizes it has stress, right? I mean, this is already a great starting point, in my opinion, because many people just don't feel it because they are so used to being in this sympathetic state of being in their nervous system that they just don't feel it. So this is already a good starting point. And I mean, breathing exercises can really help to reset the system for a moment and to find space and presence within yourself. And that can give you so many quick results in this moment. So, for example, you're more creative if you just take 10 minutes of breathing exercises. And nowadays, there are so many things you can find on the internet, so many different breathing exercises you can follow on. I could give you one example if you want.
Yeah, of course. Because I know that you're doing a lot of the stuff also like in the water, which is also a passion of mine. But yeah, anything.
Yeah, I mean, what is a really easy tool is what I really love is it's called the 1 minute breath. It's coming from this pranayama in Kundalini yoga, which I really like. I'm not classically from the yoga, but I love to work with that element. And the idea is that one breath is done in 1 minute. That's the result. And I worked 1.5 years to get there. So don't expect it to happen from the first moment. But I recommend a sportive person to start between 7 and 11 seconds. So you breathe in for something between 6 and 11 seconds, I would say. Let's say 8. So you breathe in for 8 seconds, and then you hold your breath for 8 seconds, and then you breathe out for 8 seconds. And you repeat this for 10 minutes. And it's very simple, but there are a lot of health benefits that you gain here. For example, you accumulate more CO2, and that helps your oxygen to be distributed more efficiently to the muscles, which is muscles you need to do sport, but also, of course, for your brain to think clearer, to be more focused, and to be more fit. And the other effect is that we listen to our breath and we fill our lungs with air. So with that exercise comes also, it would be good if you know how to take a big breath. So people tend to forget how to breathe because we are breathing very shallow in the upper part of the lung. So we want to learn to breathe more in the belly region, in the rib cage region, in the lung, and in the chest, and in the shoulders in the end also. And there we train also on the posture. So we not only train on oxygen or CO2 or whatsoever. So we train on the posture, we train the muscles that hold our body together in an upright and nice seated position that, helps us to go through every work day and so forth. So that would be a very practical exercise where you get in touch with yourself, where you have instant benefits gained.
Yeah.
And why not? This is something everyone can do. Take it 10 minutes in the morning or in the evening and to see how it goes.
Would you do it with a timer in the sense that you have this in front of you, or is this more like of a closed like eyes exercise where you just like try to count it yourself? Because I always struggle with that because I feel like you're cheating yourself in some ways.
That's a really good point. So I don't like counting and I cannot do it. Even if I do the easiest, simple sport or yoga exercise, I cannot count. I always forget where I am. So I set a timer. Really, it's like I set a timer. It's an app. It's a really nice app I can share with you. You can share it with the listeners. And this app gives you a sound. You define it, right? You define the interval. And I also recommend you to lay down in the beginning. You know, if you're not used to sit in a seated position, just lay down. And the key here of this exercise is not to hold your breath or to feel the breath hold. You should be relaxed, in a relaxed state, because if your body is in a relaxed state, it's like a sponge. So your body, if it's relaxed, it can heal and it can give the right signals back to your brain and the other way around. So don't feel like, I hold now my breath for 10 seconds. It's so long. Okay, no problem. You go down. It's not a competition. And eventually, if your body feels relaxed and your body trusts this new thing in your life, doing this meditation, because doing a meditation is not so easy, especially if you are busy. So if you are too much in a sympathetic state operating, maybe you are not even able to sit there, then you have to find another way where you move a little bit. So you can do movement and breath synchronized, because sometimes just to sit it's already overwhelming.
Yeah, for people that have ADHD like me, it's torture. It's funny because everything that you just said as well, like it was probably also in the first session that I had when I went into therapy at some point, like for ADHD, because it's also like, you know, breathing exercises also into the stomach, not just like into the chest, you know, like the surface breathing and so forth. I think this is a great, really practical tip. So you've been as well, like, I mean, you're used to doing all of this stuff as well, like in the water, right? And maybe just this is a purely like out of my interest as well, but this is more on the performance side right now. Do you feel like there's also gains in terms of like, let's say someone wants to do this, I don't know whether it needs to be in a diving context, but if you can hold your breath longer, and so for instance, if you're diving as well or whatever, what is the connection there? Because I'm assuming like when you're doing free diving, this is about going quite deep. So you have pressure on yourself as well. Now there's the element that, I don't know, I'm getting just panicky. I'm already starting to sweat just like talking about it. There's an element of danger to it. No, I'm okay with it because I'm also like when I'm bouldering, I'm always scared of like falling down or whatever. But do you also feel like that this is a helpful thing in the sense like to just deal with your fears in that sense, to also tackle something through, I don't know really about the connection in the sense, but like because the water seems to be it's a nice calm thing, but it's also a very deadly thing, right? Like in a sense, especially when you're breathing, there's this immediate kind of like this reflex to go up for air.
This urge to breathe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so when I started to discover freediving, so I didn't know there is freediving. And as a child, I was so in love with water. I was always underwater. So I had a glass. At some point, I was wearing glasses, and my mother found me with a glass broken because I was diving at the bottom of the pool, and somehow I damaged my glasses. So really funny story here. I was really always diving, and I was always alone diving. It was a bit sad, yeah. And I was never deep diving because no one taught me how to equalize, how to use my ear properly. And then when I discovered the freediving, so I want to put myself now in the shoes of someone who's listening, who may have never had this experience of diving. And it sounds very extreme if you talk about a world record, if you talk about a certain depth. Deadly, yeah, it can be. Of course, it can be. It's an extreme sport in a way. But if we just come back to the very beginning, so at the time to dive on one breath, it really gave me a sense of freedom to this silence underwater. And when you feel the water is surrounding your skin everywhere, you're so present all of a sudden without any effort, without sitting and waiting, or without the flow state that some people gain when they are runners, without being 2 years a runner. Normally people are not coming into the flow state. So you have to work really hard for that. Same with meditation. But with the freediving, it instantly happened to me. So I was underwater and I felt this, wow, this silence and this space was coming from inside of me. And it was really, really pure joy and love, how I can say that. And of course, you turn around and then you go up and then you take your first air again. And it's not like you have the feeling you cannot go up or something, because you go just so far, how far you feel confident. Let's say it like that.
Yeah, but that'd be the problem is like the further down you go, the harder it is also to come up again. Like just to give some perspective, right? Like your world record was, I think, on 73 meters, right? I just Googled it. So
Yeah.
So to me, 73 meters means there's no light. There's absolutely nothing. There is no light. There is no sound. I mean, sound probably a little bit. You hear your own belabored breathing. No, you're not. You're not even breathing, right? So it's just one breath for 73 meters. So 150 meters almost down and up. That is exciting again. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, it is. That was in a lake. That was 2 years ago in a lake, and it's really dark. In an ocean, it's not. You have still a lot of light in that depth. It's no problem.
Oh, interesting.
You see a lot there still until 100, until 130 even, you have still light. But at that point, you are so focused on this dive that you don't feel any fear in that sense, or you don't have that fear. It's just that you're focusing on the technique that you need and everything that you have to perform in this moment, because otherwise you couldn't go that deep if you do not equalize properly, if you do not relax and let the pressure hug your ribs, and because the air in your lungs will get compressed a lot. So you really have to relax here. And if you can manage to be in this real moment, it's a beautiful feeling. It's really like you're getting hugged by the pressure, and you feel really cozy, because the effect of freediving, deep diving, is that you have the pressure from the outside and you have the partial pressure of your blood, of your oxygen. So the deeper you go, the more pressure you have, on the blood. And with that pressure, it is simulated that your oxygen saturation is still very high, even though it is not. And with that, your body doesn't feel that you do not have the oxygen if you are mentally ready to let go. If you're mentally stressed, of course, you have fake urge to breathe things, you can have a fear and whatever, but if you can mentally let go of that, and of course, if you're going that deep, you are drained. So you have a basic fitness, you know the technique, and so on and so forth. So in the end, it's like with every other sport, you train a lot for it, and when the moment comes, you just do it. You do work on autopilot and it happens.
It's amazing to me, this kind of aspect of the mental game and like your performance that is connected to it. I'm not sure I really realized it until now that I'm much older, like how important that actually is, especially when I'm talking like with professional climbers or whatever, like really crazy strength and technique like related sport. It's not just about like, oh, how can I keep my heart rate down, or like, how can I maximize my performance? It really is about not just avoiding, but like managing this kind of state and really focusing on like what's going on. Because the moment you do panic, you get survival instincts that are really not helpful, first of all,
Yes.
because they were never meant for these situations as well, because you're not in a natural situation like this. But I think the main thing that I took away from it as well, like in my career, is that this also applies to your work life, like when you are capable of really getting into sort of a state like this, where you worry less about what are other people saying about me, am I such a mess, like I'm nervous, if you can really focus on the task at hand, you do better results. And I also think that you're stressing yourself way, way less about what's coming out. Of course, it's not as consequential or as important as, like freediving or something. But I think sometimes we kid ourselves by thinking that what we do is not important, but it is important in the context of yourself, because if you don't do it right, then you're constantly stressing yourself out. And just because you work for a B2B SaaS startup that might not cure cancer or whatever, it does not mean that it doesn't have an effect on you, of course. And I think this is where people, I think specifically people who have children, can really relate, because it puts things, as you said, also in perspective. And I don't have children, for instance, but it also took me quite a long time to kind of realize how this mental game, it's very hard to grab, like on a rational level, but it matters so much. So whatever your method is to getting to this is definitely worth it. I 100% agree.
Definitely. And this mental game, I think I was getting into this just very short before my first World Championship. It was in 2021. And I must say I was still a beginner in that moment, really, like also in freediving. I just did it. We just went to this World Championship. And I knew my potential is big, so I can dive much deeper. than I was actually doing, because in the lake, we were very limited at that time. My deepest dive was 50 or 60 meters or something like that. And then we went to the World Championship, and I started to work with some mental coach, with Katja, former national record holder of Slovakia, or still, maybe she still is. It's a long time ago. And she introduced me to stress and pressure management. And then I started to visualize, because I didn't had enough time in the training. And I was visualizing or rehearsing, however you want to call it. There are different expressions for that. But I was visualizing my dive to 74 meters, something like that. And I never did it. So my deepest dive was 68 or something. I never did it. And I was visualizing it so well that I believed I did it already. I just have to repeat it. And it was so well. It went so well. It was really nice. And that was very powerful in the moment. And that's something you can definitely use for talks, for meetings, presentations, or whatsoever. But there's also another element that I also bring into my coachings, which I find also very important, is on a daily business. Like, how do you approach your daily training routine? How do you go out of your training? Are you going out frustrated that this and this I couldn't achieve, and this I couldn't manage? Or do you go with a positive reinforcement out of that? And that's also some psychology that I apply to my daily practice. I really have a structure. I have a diary about it. So I make notes, I structure them. I really take notes of the positive things. And I take notes of, okay, where do I have to improve? But in a very constructive way, not in a subjective way, telling myself this was bad or something like that. But okay, this was good. And well, okay, but here I could improve. So next session I will do this. Next session I will do that, and whatsoever. And that's the second thing. So you have the visualization, you have the attitude of your daily routines. And the third thing that I also find very important is that everything you do takes much longer than you think it will take. And that's also what I take away from my job. Like, we were changing a structure there in the customer success team. So we started to structure the team in 3 functions, like onboarding, support, and success.
Yeah.
And I never did this big change like that before. And it takes a lot of time until the culture changes, until the processes are understood and even documented or set up, until this is lived, and so on. So you have to really think of not only days, weeks, it's months, and sometimes years. And the same with your body and training. It's really the same thing. When I started to change, I started in 2013 maybe with my mind, realizing, okay, this cannot go on. And then you start to change. In 2014, I started. Only in 2015, I really changed my diet. And now, more than 10 years ago, or 10 years ago, exactly, I feel, okay, I'm in a good state, but I'm still changing. And things take a lot of time, and people don't really believe it. They are very impatient very often. And yeah.
I think there's a very interesting bit in there. I think, like, my general message in that is that I think if you've never considered to do something like this, or like work on this kind of mental part, I highly encourage people to just like give it a chance, just like to get a taste of it in general, like whatever your method is, whether you're doing it with someone or like whatever. I also can personally say that I used to do coaching programs all the time. Like, I took them from other people on specific things, you know, like how to climb harder or how to do this and how to do that. And I'm really now at a point where I'm like, hey, I'm totally signing up for someone that, you know, like a professional climber, like her name is Hazel something. She's one of the top climbers in the world. And her program is also about this kind of mental part, exactly in the way that you said. And my former self, like my younger self, would have never even considered to do this. There's an interesting concept in this entire space in what you just said, in that if we're judging our own thoughts, I think we're always trying to kind of name the situation and then define an action from it. So for instance, oh no, this took longer than I thought. I'm so useless, right? So there's always these 2 parts to it. So like an analysis and then an action that you, or like a sort of what, like a follow thought that comes with it. And it's interesting to me because you can think about it in a sense, there are things that are untrue and unhelpful. These are the most useless things, right? It's like when you're lying about yourself, but you're also attaching something to it that is not helpful. Like, you know, this is impossible. And I'm such a failure, right? That would be an untrue statement and also not very helpful. And then there are statements that are true, but are also unhelpful. So, for instance, you say like, oh, this took longer than it ever did, and I'm never going to be able to change this in the future, right? Whatever. That was unhelpful. But what's true and helpful is that, hey, it took longer than I thought it would be, but I kind of expected it, and it's okay. So you accept it, and it's totally fine as well. And this is really just like how much you punish yourself, because I feel like it adds up with time if you just constantly punish yourself on stuff that is either untrue or just unhelpful. It really does not help as well in a professional context.
Definitely not. Definitely. This is more about the reflection. And what I found in freediving is when you dive up from a depth in the lake, depending on the depth that you're diving, but a lot of time you spend in complete darkness. Of course, I have the torch, so I see the rope, but that's the hardest part of the dive, where you really have to kick up because you're negatively buoyant. So it's dragging you down if you don't do something, and the deeper you are, the harder it is. So it's really physically very hard, and you are on the last part of the dive. So you already are in some seconds or sometimes even more than 1 minute. So yeah, also the suffering gets low. And this is when the thoughts coming. And it's very interesting. Sometimes I was observing when I was into freediving for a longer time, and I realized, what thoughts do I have in this difficult moment? And I started to write them down. And sometimes I had this thought of, this feels so exhausting. I can never be so good. I can never do it. I will not go to the competition next week. And oh no, what happens if I cannot make it? And in this kind of things, right? And we are not our thoughts. And I think we have to manage very actively to differentiate ourselves from these thoughts. And it helps to write them down. And then we can add some elements of self-talk. And the next time I was diving, I was trying to program my mind and to give me other sentences, other things that I can think of, because our mind is very simple. We can only have one thought at a time, and we can influence if this is a positive thought or if it's a negative thought. So I said, okay, next time I go up and I will tell myself I'm strong, I still have enough oxygen, I've done this so many times before, I'm getting already closer, it's nice, and in a moment the safety diver will come in, and whatever thoughts you can add here. And it's just another analogy for you can do it in every situation of life, basically. And
I think that's a good point, especially in situations where you don't have any other choice, right? Like if you're on the wall or you're like underwater, you have to go up, right? There is no other choice anyways. Or like if you're in a meeting, you kind of have to be there, So at least, no, but like it really is about that. I think people refer to this falsely as like fake it till you make it, because I don't think that is not a correct reflection of what this is. And this is not an esoteric thing. I really do believe that positive thoughts in that sense have a good outcome because of this. Yeah. I mean, the more you manage your stress in that sense better, or like that it does not even come, right? It's not just managing the stress, the better you will perform in whatever you want to do. I'm 100% with you in that sense. So, Anna-Karina, thank you very much for spending this time with me. How do you want people to connect with you? I'm assuming your website, that will be also in the show notes, which is Anna-Karina-Schmitt.com, I think. Yes, no, it's .ch, sorry. I will include it in the show notes. But is there any other way that you want people to reach out to you? And if so, who should it be?
Well, yeah, my website is currently under relaunch, but maybe it's already there when this episode is out. Well, you can also reach out to me via Instagram. So I started kind of via Instagram to talk about my freediving. So you will find out about my freediving there. I'm now adding also a little bit of the coaching and mentoring element there, since I'm just about to start to really go 100% in my own business right now. And this is a nice journey to me. And if you also have just a question regarding my sport or the mentoring program or just something else, I'm happy to get in touch with you.
Cool. Then I will also put the Instagram in the show notes.
Yeah, it's green and blue mermaid. It's a bit of a...
Oh, wow. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah.
But maybe you find me also under my name.
I will. There's no problem. Okay, cool. Thank you very much for coming. This was an amazing...
Thanks, Leah. Thank you so much for having me.
Baboom! Thank you so much for listening to The Product Tea with Leah. If you don't have enough yet, you can subscribe to my podcast right now at Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or you can head to my website, leahtarin.com. which is leahtharin.com, where you can find much more of my material or just want to work with me.